"You've got 30 minutes, sweetheart. Fix it or prove you never belonged here." The voice rang out like a gavel struck on polished marble. 200 engineers, executives, and tech reporters packed inside Sterling Aerotech's Detroit HQ conference hall turned their eyes to the stage. At the center stood a black woman in a gray hoodie and jeans, Maya Williams, 38, her posture calm, her face unreadable. The man who spoke was Preston Hale, the CEO. His navy suit gleamed under the spotlights, but behind his smile was pressure literal, corporate, and personal. The final demo for his flagship RS-900 aircraft engine was just days away, and the prototype still refused to stabilize. None of his engineers, not even his Ivy League best, could figure it out. That's why he'd sent the letter. 1 week ago, Maya had pulled the heavy cream envelope from her mailbox. Her name was written in careful ink. Inside, a letter from Sterling Aerotech. Formal, polite, almost respectful. "Miss Williams, it has come to our attention that your mechanical instincts may prove useful in resolving a final calibration issue on the RS-900 prototype. Should you succeed, a $10,000 consulting fee will be issued immediately. You are not required to sign any contracts. Your time and skill are all we ask." But Maya had read between the lines. She knew this wasn't a genuine offer. It was bait. She remembered sitting by her apartment window in East Atlanta that evening, the letter in one hand and a chipped NASA Dreams mug in the other. Outside, the neon sign from the Soul Food Diner across the street buzzed faintly. The smell of frying catfish drifted through the air. $10,000. For anyone else, it might have sounded like salvation, but for her, it was the sound of a trap snapping shut. Because what the letter didn't say, but what she knew with absolute certainty, was that Preston Hale needed her to fix his stolen engine, then stand beside it while he told the press, "This is my team. This is my employee." He wasn't just asking for help. He was asking her to be a human stamp of legitimacy. She nearly threw the letter in the trash, but something in her stirred on old anger, an old wound. She had recognized the model number, RS-900. And she'd recognized the design flaw that Sterling's own blog post had accidentally shown in a cropped screenshot. It wasn't a flaw someone discovered. It was a flaw someone created by modifying her original design without understanding it. Now, under the sterile lights of the Sterling conference hall, she bent to pick up the wrench that Preston had theatrically tossed to the floor. "You remember what I said," he added with a grin meant for the cameras. $10,000 if you pull this off. Easy money." The audience chuckled. Maya stood slowly. The wrench felt cool in her hand. Her right fingers, still tight from nerve damage, curled around the metal instinctively. From the front row, Sarah Chen, Sterling's lead engineer, leaned over to whisper to James Morrison, her smirking colleague from MIT. "She's going to fumble it. Hale will say she was a temp and walk away clean." Maya heard it. She heard everything. But her eyes were fixed on the engine, the RS-900 prototype, gleaming like a prize thoroughbred on display. She stepped forward and laid her hand gently on its pressure valve. A subtle, slight imbalance. Her pulse slowed. It was exactly as she feared. Not a design inspired by hers. Not a reverse-engineered cousin. It was hers. Bent, twisted, bastardized. But hers. She could see the resonance architecture. The distinctive bypass ratio curved, the same one she had built at NASA for the Artemis suborbital engine years ago. The same one that had been stolen. She closed her eyes. 5 years ago, she'd walked into a Houston lab after hours and found Jared Marks, her research partner and fiancé, copying their entire classified design database onto a private drive. "Don't be naive," he'd said when she caught him. "You think NASA's going to give you the credit? You're a placeholder. Window dressing. I'm just cashing in before they bury it." When she'd tried to stop him, he'd called security and claimed she was the thief. Sabotage followed. An explosion. An investigation. Jared walked free, backed by falsified records. Maya was quietly dismissed. No trial, no defense. Just erasure. But now, standing in front of this mutilated version of her dream, she knew why she was here. Not for $10,000. Not for a stage. Not even for justice. She was here to keep people alive. Because this thing, if flown at high altitude, would explode. Preston Hale strutted beside her now, addressing the audience. "You all know the stakes. My best team couldn't fix the modulation spike in the RS-900. They say it can't be done. But Miss Williams here thinks otherwise, don't you? He paused for effect. She's not one of our regular engineers. No formal credentials. No Ivy pedigree. But hey, maybe a little raw talent can save the day, The crowd chuckled again, this time uneasily. Maya turned toward him and replied, voice low but steady, I'll show you what I know. But when I'm donadont, say I ever worked for you. Preston's smile flickered. He hadn't expected that. Maya placed her hands on the engine. The tremor in her fingers settled as instinct took over. The cameras zoomed in. Reporters leaned forward. Somewhere in the crowd, Sarah Chen whispered, wait, she knows what she's doing. And Preston Hale, for the first time in the last month, looked nervous. Preston Hale is a cunning and manipulative man. If you want Maya to expose his true face, hit the like button or type 1 in the comments. And now, let's continue with her journey. The wrench turned in Maya Williams' hand with a quiet precision born of memory, not manuals. Her body moved instinctively, but her mind raced calculating, recalling, comparing. She didn't have 30 minutes. She had 5, because she'd seen enough. This wasn't just a stolen blueprint. This was a death sentence waiting to be installed on commercial wings. And Preston Hale knew it. That was why he needed her. Across the auditorium, James Morrison watched with narrowed eyes. What the hell is she doing? He muttered, arms crossed. She's stalling, Sarah Chen said, though her voice lacked conviction. Trying to look competent while she panics. But Maya wasn't panicking. She was counting. 1, 2, 3 seconds between pressure bleed and modulation decay. That gap didn't exist in her original design. Someone had forced an incompatible intake system into the engine body probably to avoid licensing fees. It threw the compression ratio off just enough to create resonance instability at cruising altitude. At 35,000 feet, with thin air and full thrust, that engine would shake itself apart mid-flight. She'd warned about it once. Nobody listened. She couldn't let it happen again. A faint throb pulsed in her right hand, nerve damage from the explosion at NASA's Houston facility. Her fingers twitched. She curled them tighter around the socket wrench and gritted her teeth. She hated that it still hurt. Not just the hand, the humiliation, the betrayal, the silence that followed when she tried to defend herself. Jared's face still haunted her, sometimes so calm, so smug the day he sat across from her during the internal hearing, acting like he didn't know her. Like 5 years of shared research, 5 years of midnight noodles and whispered dreams, had never happened. You were perfect, he'd said once, with a coldness that burned. Brilliant enough to invent it, naive enough to never see me coming. She saw him now. In the bolts, in the stolen compression schematic. He hadn't just taken her work. He'd sold it to someone like Preston Hale. Preston paced near the edge of the stage, hands clasped behind his back like a politician awaiting a campaign victory. His voice boomed again, smooth as bourbon. We're at 10 minutes, folks. I'd say our guest is making progress, though. I do hope she finds the ignition coil before we run out of coffee. The crowd laughed. Maya didn't even look up. But inside, something cracked. This wasn't about proving she was better than their Ivy League resumes. It was about proving they were dangerous. Maya Williams, a voice whispered beside the stage. She turned slightly. It was George, the janitor mid-60s, salt and pepper beard, faded maintenance badge. He'd been watching silently from the wings. You don't have to do this, he said softly. Not for them. You could walk out right now, still have your pride. She shook her head. It's not about pride. It's about passengers who don't know this thing could kill them. George hesitated, then stepped closer. Your daddy would have said the same. You remember the old Lockheed test trials? She nodded. She was just 10 then, hiding behind her father's knees, watching engines roar under pressure and men argue over margin for error. He taught her that machines told the truth people didn't. 15 minutes left. Maya reached into her hoodie pocket, felt the cool metal edges of her old NASA pin. Her fingers brushed the inscription, Ad astra per aspera, to the stars, through difficulties. It wasn't just a motto. It was a compass. She exhaled slowly, turned to the technician nearest her. Bring me a digital micromodulator and a fluke precision gauge. Now. The young man blinked. 2 need authorization. You just got it, she said, her voice cutting through the haze of doubt like glass. "Unless you want a news story about your company's star engine going supernova at 40,000 feet. The room stilled. People began to whisper. A ripple passed through the crowd. Did she just say 40,000 feet? Explosion? Wait, what's going on? Preston's face turned sharp. "Miss Williams," he said, stepping forward, voice suddenly cold. "This is a public demonstration, not a fear campaign." Maya looked at him, then really looked. Calm, unblinking. "You invited me here to fix your problem. I'm doing it. But if you'd rather I stop, I'll leave now, and the press can ask why you needed a public repair to begin with." His jaw clenched. He said nothing, but he stepped back. Maya opened the regulation panel, fingers moving now with speed. She pulled back the insulation, exposed the intake control. The resonance node, her node, was still marked with the initials she once embedded in her digital drafts. MW, 2019, NASA. It was proof. They hadn't even tried to erase her, just bent it until it almost broke. The audience had gone silent. Even Sarah Chen was frozen, tablet forgotten in her lap. Maya looked up briefly and said only this. "This engine was built on a lie, and if I don't fix it, someone will die." Then she bent back down and kept working. The hum of the RS-900 engine filled the conference hall like a living pulsequiet, ominous, incomplete. Maya Williams crouched at its side, tools fanned around her like surgical instruments, her right hand twitching slightly from strain. Sweat traced the line of her jaw, but her focus was absolute. Her voice, when it came, was calm, unforgiving. Whoever modified this engine didn't just make a mistake. They sabotaged it. Gasps rippled across the auditorium. Phones shot up. Somewhere, a reporter whispered, "She said sabotage." Up in the third row, Richard Baines, a senior aerospace correspondent for TechFlight Weekly, leaned forward, notebook open. "This is going live," he murmured to the cameraman beside him. Every word. On stage, Preston Hale stepped forward, smoothing his tie, his tone suddenly more polished. "Let's not jump to conclusions, Miss Williams," he said with a practiced chuckle. "Engines are complex. Even the best engineers have different philosophies." Maya didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the exposed compression chamber, tapping lightly against a pressure seal as she spoke. "This wasn't a philosophical choice," she said. "It's a 15.2 compression ratio, when the design requires 14.7. That's not a preference. That's negligence." Sarah Chen stood abruptly from her seat. "Waitho, do you know the exact spec? That information's proprietary, internal. Even I haven't seen those parameters." Maya turned slowly. "Because I wrote them." A silence fell, hard and sudden. James Morrison rose, eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" She stood fully now, stepping away from the engine. The grease on her fingers contrasted starkly with the clean white backdrop of the Sterling logo behind her. "I said I wrote them," she repeated, louder. "This designates compression ratios, resonance harmonics. Bypass configurations are based on the Artemis sub-orbital engine developed under NASA's Propulsion Division in 2019. I was lead systems architect." "You're lying," Sarah hissed, her voice cracking. Maya reached into her hoodie, pulled out a thin metal Carta flash drive no larger than a house key and held it up. "This contains the original source files, my notes, my calculations, my embedded code tags, all time-stamped, all signed MW, NASA, 2019. She walked to the side terminal and slid it into the USB port. The screen behind her flickered, then bloomed into light. Schematics, diagrams, chemical sequence, every line of data the RS-900 had stolen and distorted. Gasps swept the crowd. In the corner, George the janitor leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes shining with something close to pride. For a moment, Preston Hale looked stunned. Then he recovered. He stepped forward again, his voice velvet-edged. "Miss Williams, even if what you claim is true, what you're displaying now constitutes the unauthorized use of classified material." Maya turned toward him, smile faint and razor-sharp. "You invited me here to prove what I knew. Now that I have, you're calling it illegal?" Preston's lips tightened. "I have no record of you ever working on anything that would tie you to the RS-900 project." "You wouldn't," Maya said softly. Because the man you bought the design from, Jared Marks, sold you a version scrubbed of my name. The sound of that name, Jared Marks, was a match thrown into gasoline. The crowd reacted instantly. Whispers, movement, panic flickered in Preston's eyes, quickly masked. I don't know who that is. You should, Maya said. He was my partner. He stole these files, blamed me for the breach, then walked free with Lockheed's check in his back pocket. You bought a lie, Preston, and now it's humming right behind me. She pointed to the RS-900. The engine idled, unaware of the war it had just ignited. A young voice rang out from the rear seats. Is it true the RS-900 is unsafe? All eyes turned. A junior engineer stood, barely in his 20s, trembling. Two helped test the airflow. We thought something was off, but they told us to trust the math. Maya's gaze softened. You were right to feel it. Sometimes machines speak before people are ready to listen. Preston stepped in, his voice rising, brittle now. This is speculation. A woman with no current credentials, bringing a USB and a story from 5 years ago. Maya cut him off. You wanted a savior. Now you're trying to erase her again. The tension cracked. Sarah Chen walked up the stage steps, her tablet forgotten on her chair. Her eyes were on the screen behind Mayatha blueprints, the signed tags, the evidence. You're Dr. Maya Williams, she said, voice barely above a breath. The propulsion engineer from the Orion division. Maya nodded once. I read your white paper on energy, to thrust distribution, Sarah whispered. In grad school, they said you vanished. No, Maya said. They erased me. A heavy silence descended as the room processed what had been revealed. James Morrison slowly removed the MIT ring from his finger and looked at it like it was something foreign. George, still watching from the wings, muttered under his breath, damn right. Then, quietly but unmistakably, the RS-900 made a low, sharp sound, a hiccup in its airflow. Maya turned. It's unstable. Preston stepped back, visibly pale. What do you mean unstable? You said... I said I found the problem, Maya snapped. I never said it was fixed yet. She bent back down, moving with renewed urgency. We've got a harmonic imbalance building at the core. If I don't stabilize it within the next 5 minutes, your precious prototype becomes the most expensive bomb in Michigan. Technicians scrambled. The media buzzed. And Preston Hale? He went quiet. For the first time all morning, the RS-900 let out a low, metallic groan sound so subtle most in the audience didn't even register it. But Maya Williams did. She knew that sound like a mother recognizes her child's cry. It wasn't just unstable. It was unraveling. She dropped to one knee and yanked open the rear access panel, revealing a tangle of tubing, heat-shielding layers, and calibration ports. Her fingers, still sore, still trembling, moved faster than thought. The crowd murmured, uncertain whether to stay or flee. Someone get me a 7mm torque key, a thermal buffer gel pack, and a static reader now. Maya barked to the nearest intern in a sterling badge. He didn't move. George did. The janitor had seen more real engineers than the entire panel combined. Sarah Chen stepped closer, watching in a mixture of awe and rising guilt. You said it's a harmonic imbalance? Maya didn't look up. It's deeper than that. Whoever installed this intake module reversed the resonance governor and masked the feedback in the core diagnostics. It's designed to pass testing, but at altitude, it builds heat faster than the system can bleed off. Sarah's mouth went dry. That's sabotage. Exactly, Maya said. Preston Hale stepped back into the spotlight, his voice growing sharp, desperate. This is not the time for public dissection, Miss Williams. If something's wrong, shut it down and we'll address it behind closed doors. Maya looked up then, and her voice rang with authority. Number, you brought me here for a show. You're going to get one. Across the stage, a wall screen displayed the real-time vitals of the RS-900. A pulsing red line had begun flashing across the center, thermal pressure rising. Several audience members stood now, backing toward the doors. James Morrison whispered into his headset. Do we have an emergency kill switch hooked in? No one expected a live imbalance. The tech on the other end stammered. They said she was a stunt. James gritted his teeth. This wasn't a stunt. This was a crisis with an audience. Maya's damaged hand spasmed. She hissed softly but didn't stop. George appeared beside her, silently handing over the torque key and gel pack. She nodded once in thanks. Sarah joined her. "Let me help," she said. Maya paused. "You sure? I should have helped years ago." Maya gave a grim smile. "Then hold the reader steady. When I say go, we'll reset the primary node." Sarah positioned the tool. The numbers flickered wildly. A vibration started building in the floor beneath them. "You've got about 90 seconds, Sarah said. "Then let's not waste them." Preston turned to the press. "Everyone, please remain calm. The demonstration is temporarily suspended. There's no danger." But the look on his face betrayed him. His eyes darted toward the side exit. Maya caught it. And for the first time, she spoke his nomino with fear, not with respect, but with clarity. "Preston." He froze. "This engine was never yours to begin with." He turned slowly, face hard. "You have no proof of ownership," he said. Maya rose to her feet, greasy and flushed, holding a coolant rod still humming with energy. Her voice lowered. "I have everything I need. Blueprints, metadata, signatures, even the corrupted backup files your legal team thought they scrubbed. You bought a dirty product from a dirty man. You covered it up and dressed it in chrome." She stepped toward him. "But the bones of it, that's mine." The RS-900 emitted a high-pitched whine. Warning lights blinked crimson. Sarah shouted, "We've got a 10-point surge Maya now." Maya spun around, slammed the thermal gel into the open cavity, and twisted the torque key hard to the left. The vibration in the room stopped like a breath held. The engine let out a long exhale of steam. Then, silence. The room stood still. Then the diagnostic screen flickered green. All systems stable. Applause didn't come right away. It never does when the audience isn't sure whether they witnessed a miracle or a miracle narrowly avoided. Then someone clapped. Just once. Then another. And slowly, like a wave passing through reluctant minds, the applause swelled not for the company, not for the engine, but for the woman who had saved the room from witnessing disaster live on camera. Maya stepped back, wiping her hands. Sarah turned to her, voice low. "If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it." That's the problem," Maya replied. "You weren't meant to believe me. You were meant to believe them." She looked past the cheering, past the flashing phones and blinking lights, and locked eyes with Preston Hale. His expression had gone cold, cornered, and in that instant, she saw it not guilt, not regret, but calculation. He was already crafting a new lie. A voice crackled through the speaker system. James Morrison from the booth. "Security just informed me a private vehicle is waiting at the loading dock. CEO Hale was scheduled for an early departure." People turned. Preston shifted uncomfortably. "That's personal business." Maya stepped forward, addressing the room. "This isn't just corporate theft. It's criminal negligence. And if I walk out of here quietly, someone else will pay the price when this engine fails mid-air over Chicago or Dallas." The audience went quiet again. Journalists began scribbling faster. Cameras zoomed in. And then came the real shift, the point of no return. Maya reached into her bag and pulled out a small drive. She plugged it into the main display. Blueprints loaded. NASA documentation. Performance specs. All identical to what ran inside the RS-900. At the bottom corner, MW, NASA, 2019. Property of United States government. Sarah gasped. Preston turned pale. And someone in the press pool said aloud what everyone was thinking. "She's the original designer." Preston Hale's jaw clenched as the giant screen behind Maya Williams lit up with line after line of her original NASA documentation. MW, NASA, 2019. Embedded in every schematic, every subroutine, every pressure curve. It was undeniable. The RS-900 wasn't just inspired by Maya's work. It was her work modified, misused, and sold without her name. And now, under the bright white lights of Sterling Aerotech's conference hall, with cameras rolling and hundreds of witnesses watching, the truth had a heartbeat. And it was loud. "Is this real?" someone in the back asked. "Did she just say NASA?" "She didn't just say it," a voice replied. "She proved it." Maya didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She stood still, hands at her sides, her breathing steady. Her right hand ached, but she didn't show it. Her nerves, her bonus, she'd trained them to endure worse than this. But what she couldn't hide was the scar. That raised line of ruined flesh running from the base of her palm to halfway up her forearm. A reminder of the night her world collapsed. A young reporter stepped forward. "Dr. Williams, do you confirm that you are the original systems engineer behind the Orion-class engine designs?" Maya didn't flinch. "Yes." And that these designs were stolen and sold without your consent?" "Yes." A beat. "Why come forward now?" That one gave her pause. She looked out at the sea of faces, some in awe, some ashamed, some still too proud to admit what they'd witnessed. Then she spoke. "Because this thing was going to fly. And people were going to die. And I wasn't going to sit in silence and watch my life's work become a tombstone." Preston tried to regain control. He stepped forward, voice measured, an executive trying to walk through a fire in polished shoes. "Let's all remember, Dr. Williams was dismissed from NASA under accusations of classified data breaches and misconduct. Her presence here today is unverified. These documents are likely stolen." "I didn't steal them," Maya cut in. Her voice was low, even but it echoed through the room like a bell. "I created them, and then I was betrayed." Her eyes locked with his. "By people exactly like you." Gasps again. Sarah Chen turned sharply toward Preston. "You knew?" He didn't answer. James Morrison, watching from the control booth above, turned off his mic. Then he removed his headset and quietly walked out of frame. Preston tried again. "We're getting ahead of ourselves, even if her claims are true." "They are," Maya said flatly. Preston held up a hand. "Even if," he pushed, "this doesn't change the fact that she willingly performed a repair under Sterling's banner. That makes her legally a contractor of record." Maya narrowed her eyes. "There it is," she said softly. "The real reason you brought me here." She turned to the audience to note just to those present in the room, but to the invisible millions who were now watching this live stream spread across the internet like wildfire. "Let me be very clear. I was never employed by Sterling. I never signed a contract. I never agreed to represent them." She turned toward Preston again. "You dangled $10,000 in front of me to fix what your team couldn't, not because you respected my skills, but because you needed someone to clean your mess while giving you legal cover." "Miss Williams," Preston said, his voice suddenly sharper, "you are trespassing on private property and engaging in unauthorized disclosure of proprietary materials." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Then call the cops." A beat of silence. Preston's lips parted, then closed. He wouldn't. He couldn't. Because calling the police meant inviting an investigation. And an investigation meant forensic teams, discovery, subpoenas, and questions about exactly how the RS-900's core architecture came to resemble a restricted federal patent. The trap he thought he laid for her had just snapped on him. George, standing near the side of the stage, let out a low whistle. Man just watched the floor vanish under him. Sarah Chen took a step forward now, turning toward the audience. "I want to say something," she said. "I was one of the engineers who mocked Dr. Williams earlier. I judged her by her clothes, her lack of a badge, her silence." She looked down, then met Maya's gaze. "I'm sorry." Maya didn't respond right away, but her expression softened, slightly. "Sorry doesn't change what happened," Maya said, "but it can change what happens next." Suddenly, a different voice spoke. From the crowd, an older man, late 60s, with a cane and a military pin on his collar. "My grandson's on the flight crew set to test that engine next month," he said. "If she hadn't spoken up, would you have told them the risk?" Preston said nothing. The man shook his head. "I buried one son in uniform. I won't bury another because some CEO couldn't admit he bought stolen goods." The tension in the room reached a tipping point. Preston knew it, and Maya felt it. This wasn't just about science anymore. This was about consequences. And this was the moment things would never go back to the way they were. Maya reached into her satchel once more and pulled out a final envelope, this one stamped and notarized. She handed it to the moderator. "Cease and desist," she said. "Filed this morning with the U.S. Patent Office and the Department of Defense." Preston's face turned white. "This design is under federal protection. Any further use without my written consent is prosecutable as intellectual theft and national security violation." A hush dropped over the room like a curtain. The weight of what had just been done settled over every head in the building. And Maya? She stood calm in the center of it all. For the first time in years, she wasn't the one on trial. Preston Hale didn't speak. Not immediately. Not when Maya Williams handed over the cease and desist letter. Not when the crowd gasped at the words national security violation. Not even when two reporters rushed the stage to get a closer shot of her documents. He just stood there frozen, like a statue sculpted out of entitlement and fear. The moderator read the letter, eyes widening with every line. "This was filed with the patent office this morning. It's legitimate," he murmured. Maya didn't flinch. Her voice was quiet, but carried the weight of everything she'd held back for 5 years. Sterling Aerospace knowingly deployed a design derived from classified federal research without proper authorization. Whether you knew the origin or chose not to ask, that's on you, Mr. Hale. She paused, but now everyone knows. The screen behind her still glowed with technical data schematics, timelines, and digital signatures that linked directly back to her work. One line blinked, highlighted by the embedded watermark. Created by Dr. Maya R. Williams, NASA Propulsion Division, 2019. Sarah Chen stepped closer, her voice barely above a breath. "I can't work here anymore." Preston turned sharply. "What did you just say?" "I said," Sarah replied, louder this time. "I'm done. You used us. You knew we were building something we didn't understand. You covered up the failures. You used her genius to protect your image and then tried to silence her again." One by one, others began stand-in interns, engineers, even members of the press who had once sided with prestige over truth. James Morrison, who had disappeared after Chapter 3, returned now from the back hallway, holding something in his hand. A thick folder, slightly torn at the edge. He walked directly to Maya and handed it to her without a word. She opened it slowly. Inside were the original test results for the RS-900, dozens of pages, all stamped with dates and names. None of them matched what Sterling's PR team had released. These were the real numbers, and they told a very different story. Maya turned to the audience and held the folder up. These results prove the engine failed 3 simulations in a row. Sterling's reports claimed full success. Someone fabricated the data. Preston finally snapped. "This is a smear campaign," he shouted. "She's a disgraced employee. She was fired from NASA for misconduct. None of this proves anything." Maya met his fury with something colder, something far more dangerous. Silence. Then she spoke. Slowly, sharply. "I wasn't fired. I was framed." And with those words, she pulled back the sleeve of her right arm and revealed the scar. The one that had cost her the use of her dominant hand for a year. The one that surgery couldn't erase. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. The crowd fell into a stunned hush. There was no more pretending, no more dancing around implication. Preston Hale was not just a thief. He was the kind of man who thought stealing from a black woman would be easier if she didn't survive the fallout. A female voice from the audience broke the silence. "My niece applied to intern here last month. They told her Sterling only takes top-tier candidates from the right schools. She has 2 degrees. I guess the right resume didn't match the right skin color." Heads turned. A man in a gray blazer stood. "What about the employees you let go this quarter? Said it was budget cuts. Now I know it was hush money." The room had shifted. From curiosity, to sympathy, to righteous anger. And Preston was out of places to hide. Maya walked to the center of the stage, her voice steady as stone. "I'm not here to destroy your company, but I won't let my name, or my work, be used to endanger lives. The truth deserves a voice, even if it comes from someone you tried to bury." She turned toward the cameras. "I don't need your validation. I never did." Then she looked down at the engine here, engine gleaming under the lights. It was quiet now, stable, alive. But it was no longer a symbol of what they stole. It was a symbol of what she reclaimed. Suddenly, a sharp sound rang out, a phone alert followed by another, then another. People looked down. Notifications, headlines, tweets, breaking. Whistleblower exposes Sterling Aerotech's patent theft, unsafe engines. DOJ to launch formal inquiry. Live. Woman accused of NASA theft in 2019 vindicated with proof of original designs. Maya Williams becomes top trending name across U.S. social media. Preston backed away from the stage. His hands trembled. For the first time, he looked old. He looked defeated. And as the security team approached not to remove Maya, but but to escort him he whispered something under his breath. "I can fix this." Maya shook her head. "Not this time." Ugh. Someone in the audience clapped. It wasn't for spectacle. It wasn't polite. It was slow, deliberate. Then another joined, and another, until the hall thundered not for Sterling, not for the RS 900, but for truth, for integrity, for a woman who stood when no one else did. Maya Williams sat alone in the dim break room adjacent to the now emptied conference hall. The fluorescent lights flickered. The hum of the vending machine was the only sound. She stared into a half-empty paper cup of black coffee, her scarred fingers gently wrapped around it. On the table before her lay a badge. Temporary visitor. Maya Williams. Engineering consultant. The irony stung. She never worked for them. But somehow, for 30 minutes, she'd carried their future on her back. Outside the glass door, chaos simmered. Journalists circled like hawks around a bleeding empire. The Sterling board had been alerted. Lawyers were on their way. The Department of Justice had already issued a public statement. An investigation was imminent. And Preston Hale? He was nowhere to be found. Security escorted him out through the back-loading dock minutes after Chapter 6 ended silent, trembling, no longer the peacock in a $1,000 suit. Sarah Chen entered the break room quietly. She didn't speak right away. She sat across from Maya and set down a bottle of water, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. "He's gone," Sarah said. "They said he left the building entirely. Like, fled." Maya didn't look up. "That's what cowards do." A beat. Sarah sighed, pressing her palms against her face. "I can't believe I was a part of it." Maya finally met her eyes. "You weren't," she said softly. "Not really, but now you get to decide what part you play from here." Sarah looked down, ashamed. "I should have asked more questions. I should have seen it sooner." "You saw it when it mattered," Maya replied. "That's more than most." The door creaked again. This time, it was James Morrison. He stood awkwardly, holding a folder and a tablet. "They're asking for you," he said to Maya. "The board, Sterling's legal team, media, hell, even someone from the FAA is outside." Maya didn't move. "Tell them I'm not available." "Maya, Dr. Williams, they're offering full restitution. Licensing deals, public apology, seat on the board, you name it." Maya's fingers tapped her coffee cup twice. Then she stood. "Tell them I'm not for sale." James blinked. "But you could make millions." "I didn't come here for millions." She stepped closer, her voice a blade cloaked in velvet. "I came here because I watched my name get erased, my work stolen, and my integrity burned for someone else's ego. I came because if I didn't, someone else was going to die in a plane crash built on lies." She paused. "I didn't do this for power. I did this to take back the truth." Outside the break room, the mood was shifting. Employees were gathered in the atrium, not because of orders but because they wanted to stay. A young intern, no older than 23, stood holding a printout of one of Maya's old white papers, her name on the title page. "Efficient resonance mapping for high-altitude engines. Maya R. Williams, Ph.D. "I read this in school," the intern said aloud. "They didn't tell us she wrote it." George, the janitor, chuckled from his post near the hallway. "World's full of folks who get erased because they're too smart, too poor, or too black to be allowed in the spotlight." The room nodded silently. In the press area, the media had switched focus. The story was no longer "Sterling's prototype fails live." It had become "Black woman engineer vindicated after years of silence. NASA whistleblower saves public from disaster." She built it. They tried to bury it. She came back anyway. Back in the break room, Maya packed her satchel. Sarah looked at her like someone watching a ship leave shore. "Where will you go?" she asked. Maya zipped the bag. "Back to the library." "You're joking." Maya smiled. "Number, I've got kids waiting for science club on Monday." Sarah blinked. "You're going back to teaching children after this?" "I never stopped," Maya said. "Truth is, that's the work that actually matters." Just as Maya reached the hallway, a familiar voice called from behind her. It was the elderly veteranthi man who had spoken up in Chapter 5 about his grandson. He limped toward her with dignity, hat in hand. "Dr. Williams," he said, "I just wanted to thank you. You saved lives today." She nodded gently. "I only did what was right." He looked at her for a long moment. You ever think about going back? NASA, I mean. They owe you. Maya's smile was tired, but sincere. I don't need to go back to the stars, she said. Sometimes, saving the world happens down here quietly, one engine or one kid at a time. Then she left the building. No fanfare, no spotlight, no limo waiting outside. Just Maya, just truth. And for the first time in years, the scar on her arm didn't feel like shame. It felt like proof. Monday morning came quietly. The Washington Carver Public Library in East Atlanta opened at 8 a.m., just as it always did. The old neon open sign flickered to life. The front steps, still damp with dew, were soon dotted with tiny sneakers and oversized backpacks. Inside, Maya Williams unlocked the science lab annex, just past the children's reading corner. The same shelves, the same chipped mugs, the same smell of books and dust and chalk. You wouldn't know the woman who turned on the lights had just taken down a CEO, exposed an aerospace fraud, and stopped a multi-million-dollar engine from detonating midair. Because Maya never did it for recognition. She did it for mornings like this. On the table in the annex sat a stack of envelopes, white, unmarked. The handwriting was uneven kids. She opened the first. Miss Maya, I want to be like you, but I don't have a dad and I don't go to a fancy school. Do you think I still can? Trinity, age 9. Her eyes stung, but she smiled. She opened another. They said science was too hard for girls. You made them shut up. Thank you. Jayla, 11. And another. You fixed a rocket engine and still came back to help me with math. That's cooler than being Iron Man. Anthony, 10. Maya wiped her face with the back of her hand and laughed softly. This was the mission. This was the whole damn reason. The door creaked open. It was George Anod in his janitor's uniform today, but in a clean collared shirt and an old army jacket. He held a folded newspaper in one hand. Didn't think I'd find you back here so soon, he said. You didn't think I'd leave for good, did you? Maya replied. He handed her the paper. The Atlanta Times. Front page headline. Maya Williams declines Sterling settlement, chooses community over millions. I'm not interested in a seat at their table, she told reporters. I'm building a new one. George chuckled. Did you really say that? Maya smirked. I did, after they offered me a private jet and a 6-figure consulting retainer. George shook his head. And you came back here to fix paper cutter machines and teach fractions to 6th graders? No, Maya said. I came back to build launch pads. She opened the last envelope. It wasn't from a child. It was typed, formal, government letterhead. NASA. She read it once, then again, then closed her eyes. Sarah Chen's name was listed as co-signer on a statement of support. James Morrison had appended his own technical memo confirming her authorship of the Orion engine design. The Department of Justice investigation was ongoing, but the letter made one thing clear. Your record has been formally cleared. Your contribution to federal aerospace technology is now fully recognized. You are welcome should you choose to resume your work in any official capacity. No lawsuit. No threat. Just recognition. The kind she never expected to get. And yet, she folded the letter neatly and placed it in a drawer beside the other kids' notes, because she already knew her answer. Later that day, Maya wheeled in a rolling cart filled with boxes each labeled Flight Ready. The library's basement science lab had been quiet for months. Today, it buzzed with new life. 10 children, ages 7 to 12, filed in and took their seats. Maya tapped the whiteboard. Today, she said, we're going to learn what makes an engine fly, and not just any engine mine. Laughter, awe, a few stunned gasps. Wait, you made that thing on the news? One boy blurted out. Maya smiled. I made something safer, and I want you to help me make the next one. At the back of the room, George stood watching. He didn't interrupt. Didn't need to, because he saw what they couldn't. That every time Maya picked up a marker, every time she helped a girl hold a soldering iron or taught a boy to run diagnostics, she was doing something bigger than any boardroom. She was rewriting the story. That evening, as she packed up the last of the lesson plans, Maya's phone buzzed. A message from a restricted number. She opened it. They finally believe you. The truth matters now. But it shouldn't have taken this long. Unknown. She knew who it was. She stared at it for a while, then typed back, truth always matters, even when no one's listening. Then she powered the phone off, slipped it into her bag, and walked out into the quiet Atlanta night. The sky was clear above the city. For the first time in years, Maya really looked, and felt something she hadn't let herself feel in a long, long time. Not anger, not grief, not even pride. Possibility. The church bells rang low across Edgewood Avenue, calling out the hour in echoes. It was Sunday. The kind of Sunday that smelled like fresh biscuits, sounded like gospel choirs, and felt like warm sunlight through stained glass. The kind of Sunday that made even the most hardened men pause, and the loneliest women hope. Maya Williams sat quietly at the back pew of the Greater Grace Baptist Church, her hands clasped in her lap, her shoulders relaxed for the first time in weeks. She wasn't here to pray for forgiveness. She wasn't here for redemption. She was here for closure. Pastor Enoch, old and slow, climbed up to the pulpit with his usual cough, but before he could open his Bible, he paused, glanced down over his glasses, and smiled. "Family," he said, voice low but steady. "Before we begin today, I want to recognize someone sitting in the very back. She won't like me doing this, so y'all don't turn around and make her uncomfortable." Laughter rose like wind through trees. "But she's the reason my niece in Baltimore now thinks she can work for NASA, and why half the girls in this congregation won't take no for an answer." More murmurs, nods, a few claps. She stood up when others sat down. She made something beautiful out of the mess they handed her. And most of all, she did it without selling her soul. He turned fully toward her now. "Miss Maya Williams, you are seen, you are loved, and this city is proud of you." Maya's throat clenched, her eyes shimmered, and in that moment, no award, no feature article, no federal clearance letter, meant more than that old man saying those words. In that room, before those people. People who once looked at her with suspicion. People who now looked at her with pride. Outside the church, George waited beside an old truck with peeling paint and a new engine. He grinned as she approached. "Was wondering if you were going to cry in there." "I didn't," Maya said, lying poorly. He offered her a coffee from the corner stand, black, 2 sugars. She sipped and sighed. "Feels weird," she said. "Being done." George shook his head. "You think this is done?" She raised an eyebrow. They turned the corner, and there it was, the community center. Only now it had a new sign. The Williams Institute for Youth Engineering and Aerospace. Below it, a line of kids waited with clipboards, notebooks, even one with a drone kit tucked under his arm. The same kids Maya had once sat beside in silent lunchrooms. The same kids the system overlooked. And now they had a place. As they crossed the street, a sleek black SUV pulled up beside them. The window rolled down. Preston Hale sat inside, looking far more tired than usual. His suit was perfectly tailored, but something in his face had cracked like the varnish on old wood. "Maya," he said curtly. She didn't stop walking. He raised his voice. "I didn't lose everything, you know. The board still wants me." Maya turned, just slightly. "And yet," she said, "you came to talk to the girl you called a pawn." Preston's jaw twitched. "I underestimated you." She smiled faintly. "You did worse than that. You used me. And I let you because I thought maybe, just maybe, it would fix something broken." A beat passed. Cars moved behind them. "But it didn't fix you," she said softly. "And it never could." Then she turned back toward the center, and Preston Hale drove away, his empire smaller, his name no longer whispered with awe but with warning. Inside the Williams Institute, Maya passed under the new logo, drawn by one of her students. It wasn't flashy, just a circle, with wings. And inside the wings, a little black girl with her fists raised, standing atop a rocket. It wasn't her. It was all of them. That night, Maya sat by her window, watching the stars blink to life. She held a letter in her hand, one she hadn't opened yet. The return address read, Langley Research Center. Inside was a simple offer, a full scholarship, a research grant, a place on the next propulsion prototype team, and a seat at the table she once walked away from. She smiled, then folded it, and placed it next to her grandmother's Bible. Outside, a girl named Trinity knocked softly on the front door. Maya opened it, surprised. "Miss Maya," the girl whispered. "I know it's Sunday and all, but I think I just figured out how to fix the model drone's pitch controls. Maya knelt, eye level with her. Did you now? Trinity nodded furiously. Maya stood up, grabbed her keys, and smiled. Well, let's go fly it then. And as the two disappeared into the night, trailing behind them laughter and wide eyes and whirring propellers, the wind whispered something only the sky could understand. She belonged, at last.